Hello and welcome. Whether you're here to get scared with spine-tingling stories, or to relax and drift off to sleep with my voice over the soothing sound of rain, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more of this in the future. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? It was well past midnight when I found myself aimlessly scrolling through YouTube. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Honestly, I didn't even know what I was hoping to find. The night had stretched on longer than expected. I had gone through my usual routine, watching random videos, diving into old interviews, some weird documentaries that probably weren't worth my time. My mind was foggy, drifting between thoughts, and the late hour was starting to take its toll. I needed something to keep me occupied, something to fill the empty space of a night that felt like it would never end. The more I scrolled, the more I felt the weight of the darkness pressing in around me. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I could feel the stillness settling in the room. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with being awake in the dead of night, when everything feels just a little too distant, a little too disconnected. I wasn't tired enough to sleep, but I wasn't alert enough to do anything else. That's when I saw it. The channel's name didn't seem to belong to the usual YouTube fare, but something about it caught my eye. Maybe it was the fact that it was so different from the usual algorithms, the flashy thumbnails and clickbait titles, or maybe it was the quiet emptiness that lingered in its name. It seemed almost heavy. Laughs X4 sounded like a warning. I almost moved past it, thinking it was just another abandoned channel with some obscure content. But then I saw the logo. It was a black and white silhouette of a person sitting in a chair, the shape distorted, twisted. The figure was sitting completely still, its face buried in shadows. It was the kind of image that should have made me click away instantly, but instead, it had the opposite effect. I couldn't stop staring at it. The logo was unsettling, not in a dramatic, over-the-top way, but in that quiet, subtle way that works its way into your skin, like a chill that doesn't let go. There was something wrong with the figure, something off about the proportions, about the way it sat in the chair. It felt like it was almost human, but not quite. The chair itself looked ancient, like it didn't belong in the room, like it had been left there from a different time. A small part of me thought, this is probably just some weird, obscure art channel. Maybe it's some kind of avant-garde project, but my curiosity had already been piqued, and it was 2 a.m. after all. My brain was already too tired to think straight, too lost in the haze of late-night scrolling. I told myself it was just a video, just a click, and then I would move on. But I didn't move on. I clicked on the channel, and my eyes widened slightly when I saw it had only 4 videos. 4? There was something about that number that felt oddly deliberate, as if the person behind the channel had left it there intentionally, as though they were trying to say something with that small, contained body of work. It felt like I was stepping into some forgotten corner of the internet, a place no one had dared to visit in years. The videos had no comments, no likes, no dislikes, just a blank slate. It was as if the channel had been uploaded into the void, ignored by everyone but the uploader. The most recent video had been uploaded 2 years ago, but something about it gave off an eerie feeling, like it had been abandoned, left alone to decay. I could feel a strange, almost magnetic pull to watch, though every instinct in my body was screaming to close the tab, to walk away. But I didn't. I clicked on the first video. The title was The Silent Witness. The video started with grainy black and white footage, the kind that looked like it had been filmed with an old camcorder, one of those that had long since been outdated. The lighting was poor, too dim, and the camera shook slightly, as if whoever was filming was doing so in a hurry. There was no music, no narration, just the faint hum of static in the background. In the center of the screen was a person, a man, sitting motionless in an old chair, his posture hunched, his hands resting awkwardly on his lap. The room was bare, save for a few pieces of scattered furniture. The camera zoomed in on his face, but his features were mostly obscured by the shadows, his face shrouded in darkness. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just sat there, completely still. The camera lingered on him, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Then, I heard it. It was faint at first, a sound buried beneath the static. It was a distorted noise, hard to place at first. It sounded like laughter or maybe crying, but it was twisted, garbled, like someone was trying to force out emotion but couldn't quite get it right. It was low, distorted, almost mechanical. The sound filtered through the bad audio, rising and falling in strange, uneven rhythms. I leaned closer to the screen, trying to figure out what it was. The man didn't react. He didn't flinch. The noise continued, filling the room, but he remained completely still, staring at the space just beyond the camera. It was as though he was locked in place, like something was holding him there. I couldn't understand what I was hearing. The noise wasn't human. It didn't sound natural, but it didn't stop. The longer I watched, the more the sound seemed to take over. It was like it was becoming a part of the room, filling the empty spaces, making the silence feel even more oppressive. I couldn't tell whether the man was crying or laughing. The distortion was so severe, it was impossible to tell. I looked at the video's progress bar. It was barely moving. The video seemed to stretch on forever. Time felt warped, distorted, just like the sounds. I wanted to stop watching. I wanted to close the tab, to forget about it. But I couldn't. Something kept me glued to the screen. It was like I was waiting for something, anything, to happen. But nothing did, and then, abruptly, the video cut to black. There was no fade out, no ending credits, no warning, just darkness. I sat there, staring at the screen. My mind raced. What had I just watched? What was that sound? What was that man doing, just sitting there in the shadows, not reacting to the noise that seemed so unnatural? I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that this wasn't just some forgotten art project or obscure video. It felt real in a way that unsettled me, like it was meant for me to find, like someone had created it for the exact purpose of disturbing whoever stumbled across it. I wasn't sure what to do next, but I couldn't tear myself away. The pull to keep watching was too strong. I took a breath, trying to steady myself before clicking on the second video. The first one had left a strange weight in my chest, a discomfort that I couldn't quite shake. But something inside me, whether it was curiosity or something worse, pushed me forward. The title of the second video was A Place for You. The video opened with the same grainy black and white footage, the same dimly lit room, the same wooden chair. But this time, it was empty. For some reason, that felt worse. The frame was perfectly still. No movement, no breathing figures, no trembling hands. Just an empty chair, sitting in the middle of a featureless room. The silence stretched on, heavier with each second that passed. Then, the sound began. A laugh. At least, I thought it was a laugh. It started out soft, distant, like someone chuckling to themselves just out of frame. But there was something wrong with it, something unnatural. The audio was warped, degraded, like an old VHS tape that had been played too many times. The laugh wavered in and out, slowing down, speeding up, twisting into something barely recognizable. I found myself gripping the edge of my desk, my pulse quickening. The chair remained empty. The camera didn't move. There was no visible source for the sound. Yet the laughter grew louder. It didn't build up like normal laughter. It glitched, jumping in volume, cutting out and reappearing at random intervals. Like whoever was laughing wasn't in control of it. Or like something was mimicking laughter without quite understanding how it was supposed to sound. Then, all at once, it stopped. Silence. I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath. Just as I was about to close the tab, convinced nothing else was going to happen, the camera lurched violently. Someone had knocked it. The screen blurred as the camera tilted, falling sideways, the frame shifting upward, toward the ceiling. The video kept rolling, now capturing nothing but the dim, featureless ceiling of the room. There were no footsteps, no voices, no movement. The video stayed like that for a few more seconds, just an empty ceiling, before I exhaled shakily. My hands were cold. I clicked back to the channel's main page, staring at the 4 video thumbnails, each one carrying an unsettling weight. 2 more videos left. I should have stopped, but I didn't. I clicked on the 3rd. The video loaded slower than the others. For a moment, I thought my internet had cut out, but eventually, the grainy black and white footage flickered onto the screen. The camera was angled lower this time, almost as if whoever was filming had placed it on the ground or was holding it at waist level. The room looked the same, dimly lit, empty, except for that same old wooden chair in the center. The video lingered on it for an uncomfortably long time. There was no movement, no sound, except for the faint crackle of static in the background. I leaned closer, waiting, almost expecting something to happen. The chair sat there, motionless, and yet there was something oppressive about the way it was framed. It was just an ordinary chair, and yet it wasn't. I checked the progress bar. The video was over 5 minutes long, but nothing was happening. Just the chair, just the silence. And then the sound started. It wasn't distorted this time. It was breathing. Shallow, ragged breathing, slow and deliberate. But the camera wasn't shaking, which meant it wasn't coming from the person filming. It was coming from somewhere else, somewhere in the room. The breathing grew louder. It was the kind of sound that made my own lungs feel heavy, as if the air in my own room had thickened. I tried to convince myself it was just audio manipulation, just some creepy video made to unsettle people like me who spent too much time online late at night. But I wasn't convinced. Then the camera moved. Not a sudden jolt, not a cut, just a slow, smooth tilt, as if someone or something was shifting its gaze. It turned slightly to the left, revealing a corner of the room that had previously been out of frame. I stopped breathing. There was someone standing there. The figure was barely visible in the shadows, almost blending into the darkness. They weren't moving, just standing, facing the chair. Their features were impossible to make out. The poor camera quality reduced them to nothing more than a vague, humanoid shape. But I could see one thing clearly: their hands. They were gripping the sides of their legs tightly, fingers digging into the fabric of whatever they were wearing. The camera didn't react. It didn't zoom in, didn't acknowledge the figure. It just stayed there, as if it was waiting. And then, slowly, the figure started to sit down. It was an agonizing movement, stiff and unnatural, as if they weren't used to sitting, or as if they didn't want to. Their hands trembled slightly as they lowered themselves onto the chair. Once they were seated, they became completely still, more silence, and then the sound started again, the breathing. But this time, it was different. It wasn't slow anymore, it was shaking. Like whoever was sitting in that chair was barely holding themselves together. And then, just like in the last video, a smile. It started small, barely perceptible, but it grew. It stretched wider, and wider and wider, and then the video cut to black. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath the entire time. Something was very, very wrong with these videos. I hesitated before clicking on the fourth and final one. I didn't want to see more, but at the same time, I had to. I needed to know. The title of the last video? You Were Here. I felt my stomach drop. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the trackpad. My gut screamed at me to stop, to close the tab, to pretend I had never found this channel in the first place. But my curiosity, morbid, insatiable curiosity, got the better of me. I clicked on the fourth and final video. The video began like the others. Black and white, grainy, filmed with that same outdated camera. The same dimly lit room, the same wooden chair. But this time, something was off. The chair wasn't empty. A woman sat in it. She was different from the others. She wasn't hunched over. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't laughing or crying. She just sat. Perfectly still. Her back straight, her hands resting on her knees, staring directly at the camera. She looked aware. The seconds dragged on. My skin crawled. I had seen enough of these videos to know something was coming, but the stillness was worse than any sudden jump scare. Then the noise started. It was subtle at first, a low, whispering static. It was different from the other videos, almost like breathing. The woman didn't react. The sound grew louder, but not in an obvious way. It was creeping, sneaking into the spaces between silence, the kind of noise that you don't notice until it's already too loud. Then, after what felt like forever, the woman finally moved. She didn't jerk forward, she didn't scream, she didn't lash out, she just tilted her head slightly. It was such a small movement, but it felt deliberate. Like she was acknowledging something, and then she smiled. Not a wide, unnatural grin, not some grotesque, exaggerated expression, just a small, knowing smile. Like she understood something I didn't. The video continued. She kept staring, kept smiling. The noise in the background grew louder, and louder, and louder, until black screen. No outro, no credits, no explanation, just silence. I stared at the blank screen, my ears ringing, my hands clammy. I had seen countless horror videos, weird internet oddities, strange lost media clips, but this felt different. This felt personal. I checked the time. 3:07 a.m. I clicked back to the channel's main page. My stomach lurched. There were still only 4 videos, but the most recent upload date had changed. 2 minutes ago. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I hadn't refreshed the page, I hadn't seen a new video appear, but somehow the upload date had changed. As if someone had just been here. As if someone was watching. I closed the tab, shut my laptop. Sat there in the dark, the hum of my own breathing the only sound in the room. I told myself I wouldn't check again, but I knew I would. I run a small gaming channel. Nothing fancy, just me playing indie horror games in my cluttered basement. My setup is modest. A battered desk, 2 aging monitors, a decent mic that barely cuts through the background hum, and a ring light that casts an eerie glow in the darkened room. With 2,000 subs and a dream of reaching that elusive 10,000 plaque, I pour my heart into every video. Last month, something strange began to unravel. I had just finished editing a new video for my Midnight Playthrough series. The game was called 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀, a pixel art horror adventure with a haunting soundtrack that set the perfect mood. I uploaded the video, scheduled it to premiere the next day, and headed off to bed, exhausted from a long night of editing. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed unexpectedly. I groggily picked it up to see a YouTube notification. One new comment on your video, 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀 Midnight Playthrough. I frowned. My video wasn't live yet. It was still unlisted, a secret link only I had. Curious, I opened the comment. It simply read, "Turn around." A chill crept up my spine. I dismissed it as some bizarre glitch or perhaps an overly enthusiastic bot, and I closed the app, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling before drifting back to sleep. The next morning, I checked the video again. The mysterious comment was gone, erased as if it had never existed. I chalked it up to a YouTube hiccup until a week later, when things took an even stranger turn. While editing a new video, I noticed an anomaly in the raw footage. At precisely 12:07 into the recording, my game screen froze for a fraction of a second. Then, to my shock, the pixels rearranged themselves into a message. "You're always louder than you think." I rewound the clip, scrutinized every frame, but it appeared normal, just the usual in-game dialogue. My rational mind insisted it was a rendering glitch, yet the seed of dread had been planted. Soon after, unexplained knocks began to punctuate my recordings. During long sessions of streaming and recording, I'd hear faint, rhythmic tapping in the background. It was always 3 taps, evenly spaced, emerging at exactly 13:13 into each video. At first, I blamed it on my creaky old house settling. However, when viewers started noticing and commenting, "What's that knocking?" and "Bro's got a poltergeist subscriber, lol," I couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. On camera, I laughed it off with a half-hearted joke about my temperamental radiator, but privately, I spent hours checking every pipe, every nook of the basement, and found nothing. The final straw came during a live stream. I was deep into a session of phasmophobia with a few friends, the chat buzzing with playful banter about ghosts and haunted rooms. Suddenly, the chat exploded with messages. "Who's behind you? Dude, look behind you now." I froze. My face cam, which normally showed just my focused expression, revealed something new this time. In the dim background, beyond the familiar contours of my chair and the well-lit ring of my setup, a dark, barely discernible figure stood at the edge of the light. It was a shadow, humanoid in shape, positioned just outside the comforting glow of my ring light. I quickly turned around, heart pounding, only to see nothing unusual in the darkened corner of the basement. "Guys, not funny," I muttered, forcing a smile as I tried to dismiss the moment as a trick of the light. But the chat wouldn't let it go. It moved when you turned around. "There's someone there." The unease grew with every whispered comment. I ended the stream early that night, my mind racing with possibilities I didn't want to entertain. Later, I sat down to review the stream's VOD. At the 33:33 mark, there it was again. A shadow, this time unmistakably moving. The figure twitched and jerked sideways, as if deliberately evading my gaze. My blood turned to ice. I zoomed in on the footage, and that's when I noticed. The shadow wasn't clinging to the wall as I'd assumed. It was crawling along the floor, inching its way forward with a slow, deliberate motion. Shaken to the core, I decided to call the police. When the officer arrived, he methodically searched the basement, checked behind furniture, and inspected the old laundry chute. Nothing was out of place. As he left, he offered a cryptic remark. "You know, basements like this often have crawl spaces. You might want to check them out." That simple comment lingered, haunting me long after he drove away. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. For nights afterward, I barely slept, jumping at every creak and whisper in the dark. I boarded up the old laundry chute, installed extra locks, and even set up a motion sensor camera to capture any unusual activity. Then, last night, the sensor went off. I nervously grabbed my phone to view the live feed. Expecting perhaps a stray rat or an overzealous bug, I was instead met with a chilling sight. Under my desk, a figure crouched, staring directly into the camera lens. It was dressed in a dark hoodie, and its hands were gloved, obscuring any identifiable features. The figure remained eerily still, as if waiting. My heart hammered in my chest as I noticed something even more disturbing. On my monitor behind the intruder, paused at that fateful 1313 timestamp, was the thumbnail of my latest video. The title boldly displayed, "Don't Turn Around." Now, every time I hear the soft drumming of rain against my window or see a shadow flicker in the corner of my eye, I remember that night. I know that somewhere in the dark recesses of my basement, something inexplicable and possibly malevolent is watching. And every time I record, I can't help but wonder if it's waiting for the perfect moment to make its presence known again. I've always loved the quiet of my studio, the scent of hot glue, the soft snip of scissors, the gentle hum of my ring light. It's my safe space, my escape. That's why I started my channel, Crafting Calm. People say my ASMR tutorials help them sleep, but last week I stopped sleeping. It started on a Thursday. I was uploading a macrame tutorial when I noticed a playlist on my channel I didn't recognize. Watch Alone, all caps, thumbnail pitch black, private. I clicked it. The first video was titled Night 1. Grainy, dark footage of my studio, my desk, my half-finished yarn wall hanging, the fairy lights I'd strung up. The timestamp matched a night I'd stayed up editing until 2 a.m. I'd been alone, or so I thought. The camera angle was wrong. It wasn't my usual setup. It was filmed from the window behind me, the window that's always locked. I laughed nervously. A prank? A hack? I changed my YouTube password, checked my studio's locks, and bought a security camera for the window. Night 5 was worse. The video showed me sanding a wooden jewelry box, my back to the window. At 1:17 a.m., I paused to stretch. In the video, a shadow shifted outside the glass, a hand, gloved, pressing against the pane. I froze, rewound. The hand was gone, but the audio, I turned up the volume. Over the sound of my sandpaper there was breathing, shallow, ragged, not mine. I called the police. They found nothing. No fingerprints, no tampering. Motion lights might help, the officer said. I installed 3. Night 9 broke me. The video opened on my empty studio. The clock on my wall read 3:03 a.m. I hadn't been there that night. I'd gone to bed early. But someone had. The camera panned slowly, like someone was testing the angle. It lingered on my tools, scissors, X-Acto knives, the soldering iron I'd left plugged in. Then it zoomed in on my planner, open to the next day's to-do list. Film seashell wind chimes, buy more thread, call mom. My throat went dry. The planner had been closed when I left. Night 12 was uploaded 10 minutes ago. I'm typing this from my car, parked at a gas station 20 miles from my house. I don't know how they got in. All the locks were changed, the security cam feed was clean. But the video, it starts with my studio empty. The camera, still from the window, tilts down to show my work table. My newest project sits there, a dream catcher half finished. I hadn't started it yet. It wasn't due for next week's video. Then the camera moves. Not a pan, a walk. Whoever's holding it steps through the window frame. It's open, though I swear I locked it, and crosses the studio. The footage shakes slightly, boots creaking on my floor. They pass my security camera, its red light off. The camera stops at my bedroom door. It's cracked open. Inside, my phone charger glows in the dark. The video ends. The police found nothing again. No fingerprints, no footprints. But yesterday, my landlord let slip that the previous tenant had quirks. He'd been a handyman. Insisted on installing extra crawl spaces in the walls. I'm moving out tomorrow. But this morning, I got another notification. A new playlist. Watch together. It's still private. I'd been making YouTube videos for a few years now. A mix of reviews, daily vlogs, and the occasional live stream. My subscriber count was steadily climbing, and while I appreciated every comment, one subscriber's habit started to unsettle me. At first, I noticed something odd. Before each video went live, a comment from a user with the handle @echowatcher would appear on the preview page. It was always the first comment, posted almost immediately after the video was scheduled. I assumed it was some kind of glitch in YouTube's system, a stray comment showing up too early. After all, technical hiccups weren't unheard of. But as weeks passed, the comment from @echowatcher didn't just appear on every video, it evolved. The early ones were vague, a simple, "can't wait to see this," or "always here before the rest." Yet soon, the comments grew more detailed, more personal. On one video about my recent travel experience, the comment read, "I remember when you mentioned that trip. Your voice trembled with a secret only you could understand." I was startled. I hadn't shared any such personal detail, at least not consciously. It was as if the comment was referencing something buried deep in my past. The notifications became a constant. Every video I uploaded, whether it was a carefully edited montage or a raw live stream, was met with that familiar prompt. A comment from @echowatcher. And each time the comment seemed tailored to the content of the video. One day, I found a comment that said, "I know the truth behind your silence about your lost friend." Another time, it mentioned, "You shouldn't hide what you truly felt that winter night." I began to wonder how someone could possibly know these intimate details about me, details I'd shared only in passing, or in private moments of reflection that I hadn't even thought were memorable. Curiosity and a growing sense of dread drove me to dig a little deeper. I started by checking the profile of 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗶𝗹. It was sparse, no profile picture, just a few cryptic uploads that were either abstract images or plain text posts. The bio simply read, "I watch." I thought it might be an eccentric fan, someone who spent hours analyzing my every word. But then I noticed something in the comment history on older videos. There were comments from years ago, all under the same username. I scrolled further back and discovered a comment dated 5 years prior, the earliest I could find. It read, "I'm always watching, even when you don't know." That's when I recalled something unsettling. A story a friend had told me about a former YouTuber who had mysteriously passed away, yet whose account was rumored to still be active. My heart began to race. Could it be that 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗃 was more than just an eccentric fan? I decided to search for the username online, cross-referencing it with online obituaries, forums, and even social media groups dedicated to lost YouTubers. The more I looked, the more I found disjointed threads of discussion. Several users mentioned a channel that had been active long after its owner had died. Details were murky, but there were similarities in the eerie tone of the posts and comments. I reached out discreetly on a few forums, posing as someone curious about digital afterlives, and slowly the pieces began to fit together. Apparently, there had been a YouTuber who had vanished under mysterious circumstances several years ago, a creator who was known for introspective vlogs and who had, according to some accounts, struggled with personal demons. Her username had been different, of course, but a few of her close friends mentioned that after her death, her digital presence seemed to persist in inexplicable ways. The more I uncovered, the more unsettled I became. It was as if 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗃 was a ghost, tethered to the digital realm, silently observing, waiting for someone to notice. Every new comment felt like a direct message from the past, a quiet reminder that some secrets aren't so easily forgotten. I started to question if I was simply reading too much into coincidences, but the personal details were too accurate to dismiss as mere chance. Now, every time I see that first comment pop up, my pulse quickens. I can't help but wonder who, or what, is really on the other side of that account. Is it truly just a remnant of someone long gone, or is there something more sinister at play in the depths of the internet? I'm left with more questions than answers, and as I continue creating content, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, not just as a creator, but as someone whose past is coming back to haunt the present. I wasn't even thinking about him that night. That's the part that keeps replaying in my mind. I had spent so many nights after his death drowning in memories, scrolling through old messages, listening to his favorite songs, staring at the last photo we ever took together. But that night I wasn't. I had finally started to move forward, or at least I thought I had. And then I saw him. It was supposed to be a normal night, just another meaningless distraction. I was lying on my bed, wrapped in my blankets, mindlessly clicking through YouTube. I didn't even know what I was looking for, just something to fill the silence, to drown out the thoughts I didn't want to deal with. That's when I clicked on the live stream. It was a random recommendation. One of those IRL streamers who walked around busy streets, talking to strangers and making jokes. I had never watched him before, but the city lights and distant noise of traffic in the thumbnail made it feel like a window into the real world, something far away from the quiet stillness of my room. The streamer was in some crowded downtown area, chatting with people on the sidewalk. The camera shook slightly as he moved, bouncing between strangers. I wasn't really paying attention, just half watching, letting it play in the background, until the camera turned slightly to the left, and I saw him. I froze. Liam. I must have imagined it. That was my first thought. My tired brain was playing tricks on me. Grief does that, doesn't it? It makes you see faces in crowds, hear voices that aren't there. But I wasn't imagining it. I sat up, my heart slamming against my ribs as I grabbed my mouse and rewound the stream. My hands were shaking so badly I had to go back twice, forcing myself to look. There he was. Not a memory, not a trick of the light. Him. Liam was standing on the sidewalk, just out of focus, his hands in his pockets. Same dark hair, same sharp jawline. He looked older, maybe a little thinner, but I knew him. I knew him. He was alive. But that wasn't possible because Liam was dead. Right? I had cried at his funeral. I had listened to his best friend, his supposed best friend, tell me how tragic it was, how sudden, how unfair. Caleb was the one who told me. Caleb was the one who called me that night, his voice breaking as he said the words that shattered my world. Liam's gone. There was an accident. He didn't make it. And I had believed him. Why wouldn't I? But now my whole body felt cold. My stomach twisted painfully as the live stream kept going, the camera bouncing, the streamer laughing about something I didn't hear. Liam was all slipping out of frame. I scrambled for my phone, taking a shaky screenshot before the camera moved again, capturing the exact moment I saw him. And then, as if the universe was mocking me, the stream buffered. The chat froze, the screen glitched, and when it came back, he was gone. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. This didn't make sense. Had he faked his death? Had it all been some elaborate trick? But why? What kind of person does something like that? What kind of person lets someone they love cry over an empty casket? What kind of person disappears for months, lets everyone think they're dead, only to show up in the background of a random YouTube stream, like nothing had happened? I needed answers. And there was only one person who could give them to me. I found Caleb's contact in my phone, my fingers hovering over his name. I hadn't spoken to him in weeks, not since the funeral, not since I told him I needed space. I swallowed hard and typed out a message. Me. Caleb, I need to ask you something. It's important. The message sent. The read receipt popped up immediately, then nothing. I waited, my heart pounding, watching the 3 little dots appear, disappear, then reappear again. Then, finally, Caleb, what's wrong? I didn't know how to say it. I didn't even know what I wanted to hear. But I forced myself to type the words anyway. Me. I saw Liam. A pause. A long one. Too long. Then, Caleb. That's not funny. My breath hitched. I wasn't expecting that. Me. I'm not joking. I saw him. On a live stream. Tonight. He was just there. Walking like nothing happened. Another pause. Then, Caleb. Don't do this to yourself. A cold sensation spread through my chest. Me. I have a screenshot. I can send it to you. This time, the dots didn't reappear. He was reading my messages, but he wasn't responding. I stared at my phone, my skin prickling. Something was wrong. Why wasn't he saying anything? Why wasn't he denying it? Then, finally, Caleb, delete it. I froze. Me? What? Caleb, just delete the screenshot. Forget about it, please. My body went cold. This wasn't shock. This wasn't disbelief. This was guilt. I felt my hands clench around my phone as my mind raced. He knew. He had always known. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't some big joke that had gone too far. Liam's death had been a lie, and Caleb had helped him do it. I gritted my teeth, my vision blurring as a mixture of confusion, betrayal, and rage crashed over me. Me. Where is he, Caleb? No response. Me. Tell me where he is. Still nothing. And then, Caleb, stop asking questions. The read receipt vanished. He had blocked me. I sat there, my heart hammering, staring at the screen in disbelief. He didn't even try to explain. He just wanted me to forget. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. I've been running my travel vlog channel for almost 5 years now. I've been to over 30 countries, stayed in everything from 5-star resorts to sketchy roadside motels, and documented it all for my subscribers. I thought I'd seen it all, the good, the bad, and the weird. But nothing prepared me for what happened last summer. I was in Eastern Europe, hopping between small towns, looking for off-the-beaten-path locations to feature on my channel. One of my subscribers, a local, had recommended a remote village near the mountains, known for its untouched nature and abandoned Soviet-era structures. It sounded perfect, authentic, eerie, and cinematic. The journey there was long. The roads turned from highways to cracked pavement, then eventually to dirt paths winding through dense forests. By the time I arrived, the sun was starting to set, casting long shadows over the empty streets. The village was smaller than I expected, just a handful of houses, most of them boarded up or in serious disrepair. There was no sign of tourists, no shops, not even a gas station. I found a guest house at the edge of the village, run by an elderly couple who spoke little English but were kind enough to offer me a room for the night. After settling in, I grabbed my camera and headed out to explore. The air was crisp, the silence almost too perfect. As I walked, I filmed everything. The rusting metal of an abandoned train car, the overgrown gardens, the crumbling facades of buildings that once held stories no one would ever tell. I didn't know it at the time, but somewhere in that footage I captured something I wasn't supposed to. I kept filming until the last bit of daylight faded. By then, the village had taken on a completely different atmosphere. It wasn't eerie in a supernatural way. There was no mist rolling in, no sudden drop in temperature, but something felt off, like I was being watched. I chalked it up to exhaustion and headed back to the guest house. The owners had already gone to bed, so I locked up behind me, went to my room, and started backing up my footage. That's when I noticed it. At first, it was just a shadow in the distance, something that could have easily been a trick of the light. But as I scrubbed through the footage, I saw it again and again. In almost every shot, somewhere in the background, always barely visible, there was a man. He wasn't watching me outright. Sometimes he was standing near a doorway, half hidden. Other times, just a silhouette behind a broken window. But the worst part? In one shot, where I panned across the train car, he moved. He had been standing behind it. As my camera turned, he stepped out of sight, disappearing behind the rusted metal. I hadn't noticed him while filming. I hadn't heard footsteps, nothing. I felt a cold wave of fear crawl up my spine. I was alone in this place. The village was practically abandoned. So who the hell was this guy? I shut my laptop and locked my door. The guest house had no Wi-Fi, no cell service. I told myself I'd leave first thing in the morning before sunrise. I just needed to get some sleep. But then, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my window. Slow, deliberate. Just one person. I lay frozen in bed, my heart hammering. I didn't want to move, didn't want to look. But the footsteps didn't stop. They circled the building. Then they stopped, right outside my door. I reached for my camera, keeping as silent as possible, and started recording. The red light on the screen cast a faint glow, just enough for me to see the shadow under the door. Someone was standing there. I held my breath. The doorknob rattled. Not forcefully, not like someone breaking in, just testing. I don't know how long I lay there, gripping my camera, waiting for something to happen. Eventually, the shadow moved away. The footsteps faded into the distance. I didn't sleep after that. As soon as the first hint of daylight crept in, I packed my bag and left. I didn't tell the owners, didn't ask questions. I just drove until I hit the next town with a proper hotel and locked myself in. Later, when I reviewed the recording, I saw something I hadn't noticed in the moment. When the doorknob rattled, there was a sound. Quiet but clear. A whisper. 2 words. Not yet. I never posted that footage. I don't know if it was some drifter, a squatter, or something worse. But I do know this. Whoever he was, he knew I was there before I even realized he existed. And for some reason, that night, he chose to let me go. I'm not a big YouTube person. I watch the usual stuff. Movie reviews, tech unboxings, music videos. I don't leave comments, don't subscribe to anything. I just let the algorithm do its thing while I zone out. A few months ago, I was working late on my laptop, letting a random playlist of lo-fi beats play in the background. It was past midnight when the music suddenly stopped. At first, I thought my Wi-Fi had cut out, but when I glanced at my screen, the progress bar was still moving. Except, it wasn't music anymore. A new video had appeared in the queue. I hadn't clicked anything. The title was just a string of random letters and numbers, like someone had smashed their keyboard. The thumbnail was pitch black. No views, no channel name. Just a 1 minute, 47 second runtime. I frowned. Maybe it was some weird ad. A broken upload. I hovered my mouse over it. Nothing. No description, no related videos, just an empty void. I hesitated, then hit play. For the first few seconds, the screen stayed black. No sound, no visuals. Then, a grainy image flickered into view. Surveillance footage of a dimly lit hallway. The angle was high, looking down at a row of apartment doors. The quality was bad, almost distorted, like it had been compressed too many times. At the 0:23 mark, a door creaked open. Not fully, just a crack. Just enough for someone to peek through. Nobody stepped out, nobody entered. The door simply hung there, slightly ajar. I waited, my breath shallow. At 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗶𝗹, the camera glitched. The screen tore for a moment, breaking into pixelated static. When the image returned, the door was shut again. At 1:02, the feed switched, a different camera. This time, it was inside a bedroom, small, messy. Sheets partially pulled off the bed. It took me a moment to realize why my stomach suddenly twisted. The layout looked familiar. The nightstand, the desk, the small bookshelf in the corner. It looked like my room. But that didn't make sense. The furniture wasn't quite right, the bed was unmade, but the sheets were darker than mine. The bookshelf had more clutter than I remembered. It was similar, but offsa, like someone had tried to recreate it from memory. I felt uneasy. At 1:27, something moved. A shadow, not a person, not fully. Just a dark shape shifting near the bed, too quick to make out. I leaned in, trying to see more clearly. At 1:42, the camera flickered. A final static burst, then everything cut to black. A still frame appeared for half a second. A screenshot. I stopped breathing. It was my room. No doubt this time. Same layout, same desk, same unmade bed. The same exact angle I was looking at from where I sat. Something's watching. I slammed my laptop shut. My skin went cold, my ears ringing. I forced myself to breathe. Maybe it was a prank, a well-crafted horror video meant to scare people. But then I realized I had never filmed my room. I never uploaded anything, never turned on my webcam. And yet, that final frame showed my laptop, open, streaming a video, and in the reflection of the screen, just barely visible, something was standing behind me. I froze. My body locked up as my mind screamed at me to turn around, but I couldn't. The air felt heavier, pressing down on me like a weight. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Slowly, so slowly, I reached for my phone, my fingers shaking. Without moving my head, I opened the camera app and switched it to front-facing. I held my breath and lifted the phone. The screen loaded, my face appeared, my room behind me, empty, no one there. I exhaled shakily, feeling like an idiot. But then, the screen glitched. A brief static distortion. A single frame flashing too fast for my brain to fully register. But I saw it. A figure, standing in the doorway, watching me. Then my phone crashed. The screen went black. The room felt wrong, like the air itself had shifted. I could still feel it. That weight, that presence. I grabbed my laptop with trembling hands and forced myself to reopen it. The video was gone. Not in my history, not in my watch list, not anywhere. But when I refreshed the page, a new recommendation appeared. Another random string of letters and numbers. A black thumbnail, and a "Live Now" tag flashing in the corner. I don't know why I clicked it. Curiosity, fear, some sick need to know? The screen opened. The camera was pointing at a dimly lit room. Small, messy, sheets pulled off the bed. My room. And the door behind me was slowly creaking open.